Hey YouTube, Sloan Pantheist. I tried doing this video earlier, but it went over 10 minutes, so I'm going to have to do a lot less explaining than I originally intended. There's going to probably be little errors in the video, but just stick with me on it. I have to fit this into a 10-minute time span. Now, this is going to be the origin, or not the origin, but the origin of the beliefs of the 5 major world religions. We're going to start with Judaism. Okay, Judaism developed in Israel. Now, Israel, as you see in the Middle East and even North Africa and areas like that, they don't really have a whole lot of resources. Okay, now this is, hold on, stick with me. I ain't bashing these areas. I'm just bashing the religion. No, not doing that either. I'm just explaining. Now, anyway, the Sahara Desert, it ebbs and flows in its dryness. There are times where it's pretty moist and it's actually pretty green. And there's times where it's not. Now, 5,000 years ago, up until now, we've entered a time where the Sahara Desert was dry and uninhabitable, which means all of the population scattered about had to consolidate at the Nile River. And they, of course, would war because even though there's plenty of water for humans and everything to consume in the Nile River, you also have to water the crops, and you have crop failures and stuff like that, which you'd also see in the Bible. You know, famines. You have famines in Egypt, famines in Israel, famines even further south into Sudan. And if you look at skeletal remains, and you can find this online, the war was very brutal. I mean, they would go as far as bashing skulls in, and yeah, very brutal. Now, in order to explain why the Old Testament is it's not very spiritual, especially in the beginning and even towards the end. It's more warlike. You have to understand the region that it developed in. Okay, you have Israel, which is basically in a desert, okay, but it's a slab of fertile land, just a little bit, near the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, that helps with trade. If you're going to want to trade, you're going to want to get enough resources for your people, you're going to have to get near the Mediterranean Sea. Alright, so unfortunately, there's not enough space, not enough room, whatever, for everybody to live in. Okay, so certain people start noticing the differences in other people, mainly their beliefs, because at that time, you know, majority of the people look the same. Now, in that region of the world, now, so they start looking for differences in philosophies. If anything went wrong, they would try to blame each other's tribal gods, or, you know, oh, it's their fault, and you know, they come up with excuses to kind of downsize the population during the time of Great Famine. Now, they may not have been consciously aware of this, may have been more of a subconscious effort, but they were coming up with a reason to get rid of that population. Okay, you're not going to have enough crops, you know, we know these people are going to kill us, you know, so, or there's going to be war, so we might as well go on the strike and blame their God and have everybody go to them. Now, this has also caused conversions to certain religions, but if a crop would fail, they got to the point where most of the so-called prophets were very concrete in their faith. They would instead blaming their God, well, they still blame their God, but then they come up with excuses why the actual God, their God, caused this to happen. After they kind of guess at it, and then they just go and kill the other people and war with them and whatnot. So much so that the Israelites actually came up with a plausible reason to wipe out the Canaanites, because their God said so. Okay? Even though it was just basically we got to get to that trade, we got to get to that land of milk and honey, we got to kill these people off, you know, or our tribe's going to, you know, not survive. So anyway, the Canaanites, you know, they wiped them out, and over time, you know, there's several empires warring for Mesopotamia, and they eventually go on to Jerusalem, and you have war and between tribes, between empires. That affects the Bible, that affects the belief structure. And if you notice, the Old Testament really isn't a whole lot there's not a whole lot of spirituality until towards the end. There's a reason for that. The Persian Empire comes along. Now, in ancient Iran, they did have, you know, a lot of crop failure. It was a hard life, but the Iranians actually set up certain types of systems that actually worked. Okay, when the Persian Empire came to its, well, it ebbed and flowed in several different eras, but when the Persian Empire came up in the world, it actually would either get the Indus Valley River, or the Indus River, or the two Mesopotamian rivers. So I believe at the height of its empire, it had both. Now, those are two resource hubs that will allow plenty of resources in. So, Zoroastrianism developed a little differently. Okay, it was a little more spiritual, a little more into the connecting with nature and the higher power that be, or whatever they want to believe in it. Because it started off from their pagan beliefs and it morphed into, the belief in Ahura Mazda, and then let's say Angra Mainyu. Not sure on that. We'll just go with Ahriman or Araman or whatever. Honestly, I really, yeah, you can look it up. It's in the Avista if you got one. If you don't, go online. You just type in Ahura Mazda, and you'll get the little counterpart they have, the destructive principle. Okay, they got a little more spiritual with it, and they didn't really war. They warred, but not as much as like you would have in near Israel, Egypt, and North Africa and Middle East. So, well, they eventually took over Jerusalem. Okay, and this time the two beliefs sort of merged. Well, okay, Zoroastrianism rubbed off into Judaism. Judaism was too much of a minority religion to really affect anything with Zoroastrianism. And as it did, if you see in the later testaments that were written during the time of King Cyrus, the spirituality aspect starts to grow. And then here comes Christianity. Okay, anybody sees a picture of Jesus, sees a picture of Zarathustra, yeah, spitting image. They could be brothers. Okay, yeah, they took that one, the image of Zarathustra, and modified it a little bit and made Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm kind of skipping over Islam, but we all know where that developed, and it was pretty much in the same region. But anyway, so Christianity becomes a little bit more spiritual, but you got to remember it came from Judaism. So now when it spread to Rome, it also, through the Roman Empire, they had, the ancient Jews, they threatened to kill people, throw them out the desert or something. It's like, okay, well, we got to come up with an even worse way than just death. And so they invented, torture, and eventually they invented the concept of hell. Okay, now you're going to burn forever. Now, in Zoroastrian faith, they do have people who get banished to darkness, but it's not for eternity. Some Zoroastrians would say otherwise, but if you actually read towards the end of the, eventually towards the cosmic end of the battle or whatever, eventually over time, people who are banished to darkness come into the light, and everybody, goes to paradise. Which, by the way, paradise is a Persian word. I found that out quite a while back. I looked it up, and I believe it is. Okay, I was told by a Persian, so don't get mad at me. But anyway, so yeah, so they invented hell and made people, they used psychological fear on them. You don't want to burn forever, do you? Of course, Mona Lisa says, well, when you die, your body goes into the ground. So how can I burn? How can my body burn? How can my eyes burn when they're in the ground? Whatever. In Christianity technically focuses on the resurrection of the dead, but we'll get to that later. I don't want to go over again, so I'm probably going to try to post another video later on. Anyway.